At first, this looked like a simple story about a damaged car being repaired, but the deeper you go into the situation around the Bugatti Chiron, the more it becomes clear that this was never just about fixing a car. It feels like something much bigger has been building for a long time, long before the crash even happened. Right now, Matt Armstrong is getting very close to finishing one of the most talked about rebuilds in the car world. But to really understand why this moment feels so important, you have to go back to the beginning of the story, before the accident, before the rebuild, and even before Matt ever got involved. There was another key person in this story, Alex G. He was not just any car owner. He already owned 2 Bugattis, which already places him in a very rare group of people in the world. But he wanted more. He was trying to buy a 3rd Bugatti, specifically the Mistral, which is one of the most exclusive and limited cars ever made. On paper, everything seemed perfect. He had the money, he had the experience, and he was clearly serious about the purchase. In fact, he was even ready to pay more than the official price just to secure the car. He reached out directly, showing clear intent and commitment. For most people, this would be more than enough to complete such a deal. But in this case, something unexpected happened. He was stopped, not because he couldn't afford it, not because the car was unavailable, and not because of any obvious reason. Instead, it was a quiet decision from Bugatti's side that he was simply not the right fit for this purchase. At the time, many people did not think much of it. It just looked like another example of a luxury brand controlling who gets access to their most special products. But when you look at everything that happened after that moment, it starts to feel like this was not just a simple rejection. It feels more like the beginning of a chain of events that would lead to something much bigger. It raises a deeper question about control and ownership. When you buy a car, especially one as expensive as a Bugatti, how much control do you really have over it? Is it truly yours, or are you still operating within rules set by the manufacturer? These questions did not seem important at the time, but they would soon become central to the story. Not long after that rejected purchase attempt, everything changed in an instant. One of Alex G's Bugattis was involved in a crash, and that single moment completely shifted the direction of the story. A car that once existed safely within the controlled environment of the manufacturer was suddenly taken out of that system. It was no longer protected, no longer maintained under official conditions, and no longer part of the carefully managed world that Bugatti creates for its cars. Instead, it became something else, a damaged machine, exposed and uncertain, with an unclear future ahead. This is where the story begins to move into unfamiliar territory. Normally, cars like this would be handled in very specific ways, often involving official channels, approved repair centers, and strict procedures. But this time, things did not follow that path. Instead, the car ended up in the hands of Matt Armstrong, a YouTuber known for rebuilding crashed cars. At first, this might not seem unusual. After all, rebuilding cars is what he does. But this was not a normal car. This was a Bugatti Chiron, one of the most complex and expensive hypercars ever built. Rebuilding something like this outside of the official system is not just difficult. It is something that most people would consider impossible. And that is exactly why this moment is so important. Matt did not enter the situation trying to prove a big point or challenge the system directly. He simply saw a problem and decided to take it on, just like he has done many times before. But this time, the scale of the challenge was completely different. The expectations were higher, the risks were greater, and the attention from the public was much stronger. People were watching closely, not just to see if he could fix the car, but to see what it would mean if he actually succeeded. Because if a Bugatti could be rebuilt outside of factory control, it would change how people think about these cars forever as the rebuild began. It quickly became clear that this was not going to be a normal repair process. With most cars, even expensive ones, there are parts available, guides to follow, and systems that can be replaced or repaired with some level of support. But with the Bugatti Chiron, things are very different. Many of its systems are not designed to be taken apart outside of official environments. Some parts are not sold individually, and some repairs are not meant to be done at all outside the factory. This means that instead of simply replacing damaged components, Matt and his team had to approach the project in a completely different way. They had to understand how everything worked at a deeper level. They had to study the car, analyze the damage, and figure out solutions without relying on official instructions. This is where Bob plays a critical role in the story. While Matt provides a vision and direction, Bob is the one who turns those ideas into reality. His work is not just about fixing things. It is about creating solutions where none officially exist. He measures, cuts, and builds parts from raw materials, often recreating components that cannot be bought or easily replaced. This level of work requires not just skill, but also experience and confidence. There are no step-by-step guides to this kind of rebuild. Every decision matters, and every mistake could cause serious problems. What makes this partnership so effective is the balance between them. Matt pushes forward, always looking for ways to keep progress moving, while Bob ensures that each step is physically possible and structurally sound. Together, they form a system that allows the rebuild to continue, even when the challenges seem overwhelming. And as the project moves forward, the car slowly begins to come back to life, piece by piece, showing visible progress that keeps viewers engaged and curious about what will happen next. As the rebuild continues and the car gets close to being complete, something interesting starts to happen in the background. This is no longer just a private project happening in a workshop. It is being documented and shared with millions of people online. Every step, every challenge, and every solution is visible to the public. This creates a situation that is very unusual for a brand like Bugatti. These cars are normally kept within a controlled environment, where information is limited and the process is carefully managed. But now, one of their most complex cars is being taken apart and rebuilt in full view of the world. This changes the dynamic completely. People are no longer relying on official information or assumptions. They are seeing the reality of how the car is built, how it can be repaired, and what happens when it is taken outside the system. As the project gains more attention, it becomes harder to ignore. Discussions start to grow across the internet, with people sharing opinions, asking questions, and forming their own conclusions. And yet, despite all this attention, Bugatti remains silent. There is no public reaction, no clear statement, and no visible attempt to intervene. This silence becomes part of the story itself. It raises questions about what the company is thinking and how they view the situation. Are they watching closely? Are they concerned about what this means to their brand? Or are they simply waiting to see how it all plays out? The lack of response creates space for interpretation, and that only increases interest in the story. Because in a situation like this, silence does not feel like absence. It feels like awareness without action, and that makes people pay even more attention to what is happening. Now, as the Bugatti Chiron moves closer to running again, the meaning of the entire project begins to shift. At the start, it was about fixing a damaged car. But now, it represents something much larger. If the car successfully returns to full working condition, it challenges long-held ideas about what is possible and what is not. It raises important questions about control, ownership, and access in the world of high-end cars. For years, many people have believed that cars like this can only be properly maintained and repaired within official systems, that anything outside of that would be too risky or simply impossible. But this project is starting to show a different reality. It shows that with enough knowledge, skill, and determination, even the most complex machines can be understood and rebuilt. This does not mean that the process is easy or that everyone should attempt it, but it does change the conversation. It shows that the boundaries are not as fixed as they once seemed. And that is why this moment feels so important. It is not just about one car or one rebuild. It is about what happens when those boundaries are tested and possibly broken. As the final stages approach, the attention around the project continues to grow. People are waiting to see the result, not just out of curiosity, but because they understand that this could mark a turning point. If the car runs successfully, it will not just be a technical achievement. It will be a statement about what can be done outside of traditional systems. In the end, this story comes back to a simple but powerful sequence of events that are all connected. FXAlexG's attempt to buy another Bugatti, the unexpected rejection, the crash that followed, and a rebuild that took place outside of the official system. All of these moments are linked together in a way that now feels impossible to ignore. Each step led to the next, creating a path that no one could have predicted at the beginning. And now, that path is leading to a final moment where Matt Armstrong is about to complete something that started in a completely different world. This is why the story feels so different compared to other rebuilds. It is not just about the work being done in the present. It is about everything that led to it. It is about the decisions, the limitations, and the unexpected turns that shape the outcome. As the project reaches completion, the focus will shift once again. The rebuild itself will no longer be the main story. Instead, the attention will move to the reaction. How will people respond? How will the industry react? And what will this mean for the future of cars like this? These are the questions that will define the next stage of the story. Because once the car runs, the conversation will not end. It will begin again, but in a completely new way. And that is what makes this moment so important. It is not just the end of a rebuild. It is the beginning of a much larger discussion that could change how people see these cars and the systems around them for years to come. As the project moves into its final phase, the focus naturally shifts from what has already been done to what still remains. And this is where the pressure becomes even more intense. Reaching the last stages of a rebuild like this is not the easiest part. It is often the most difficult. Early in the process, progress is visible and exciting. Parts are removed, damage is exposed, and solutions begin to take shape. But near the end, everything has to come together perfectly. Every system must work in harmony, and even the smallest issue can delay the entire project. With a car like the Bugatti Chiron, this becomes even more critical because of how complex and interconnected everything is. The engine, electronics, cooling systems, and structural components all depend on each other. One small fault in one area can affect multiple systems at once. This means that Matt and his team are no longer just building or repairing. They are testing, adjusting, and refining every detail. It is a stage that requires patience, focus, and deep understanding. At this point, the excitement is mixed with uncertainty. The car may look complete from the outside, but the real question is whether it will function as expected when everything is turned on together for the first time. This is the moment that everyone is waiting for. The first proper startup. It is not just about hearing the engine run. It is about confirming that all the work, all the decisions, and all the risks taken throughout the rebuild were correct. And this is what makes this stage so important. It is a point where the project either proves itself or reveals new challenges that must be solved before it can move forward at the same time. The audience following this journey plays a bigger role than it might seem at first. This is not just a technical project happening in isolation. It is a public experience, shared through videos, discussions, and reactions from people all around the world. Every update brings new opinions, new theories, and new expectations. Some people fully support what Matt is doing, seeing it as a powerful example of skill and independence. Others remain skeptical, questioning whether a car like this can truly be rebuilt to the same standard without factory involvement. This mix of support and doubt adds another layer to the story. It creates a kind of tension that goes beyond the workshop. It turns the rebuild into something that people feel invested in, almost as if they are part of the process themselves. And this is something that traditional car manufacturers are not used to. Normally, their processes are hidden, controlled, and carefully managed. But here, everything is open. Every success is visible, and every mistake is also visible. This level of transparency changes how people understand the car. It makes the process feel more real and more relatable, even though the car itself is far from ordinary. And as the project gets closer to completion, the audience becomes even more focused, waiting to see how it all ends. Their attention, their discussions, and their reactions all contribute to the importance of this moment, making it feel bigger than just a single rebuild. Another important part of this story is how it challenges the idea of what expertise really means in the modern automotive world. For a long time, there has been a clear line between official knowledge and independent skill. Manufacturers like Bugatti have always been seen as the ultimate authority when it comes to their cars. They design them, build them, and control how they are repaired. This creates a system where knowledge is centralized and access is limited. But projects like this begin to question that system. They show that expertise can also exist outside of official channels. It may not look the same, and it may not follow the same processes, but it can still be real and effective. Matt and his team are not working with factory support or internal documentation, yet they are still making progress on one of the most complex cars ever built. This does not mean that the manufacturer's role is unimportant. Their knowledge and experience are still incredibly valuable. But it does suggest that the gap between official and independent expertise may not be as large as people once believed. And this idea has implications that go far beyond this one project. It connects to larger discussions about repair rights, access to parts, and the ability of individuals to work on their own vehicles. As technology becomes more advanced, these questions become more important. And this rebuild becomes a real example of what is possible when those boundaries are tested as the moment of completion approaches. There's also a growing sense that this story is about more than just the past and present. It is also about the future. What happens after the car runs is just as important as everything that happened before. If the rebuild is successful, it could influence how other people approach similar challenges. It could inspire more independent builders to take on projects that they might have avoided before. It could also encourage more open discussions about how manufacturers handle repairs and access to parts. On the other hand, it could also lead to stronger efforts from manufacturers to protect their systems and maintain control. Either way, the impact will not be limited to this one car. It will spread into the wider automotive world, shaping opinions and possibly even influencing decisions at a higher level. This is why so many people are paying attention. They understand that this is not just a single event. It is part of a larger shift that may continue to develop over time. And as that shift begins to take shape, the role of projects like this becomes even more significant. They act as real-world examples that people can look at, discuss, and learn from, helping to move the conversation forward in meaningful way. In many ways, the rebuild of this Bugatti Chiron has already achieved something important, even before the final result is confirmed. It has changed how people think about these cars and the systems around them. It has shown that there is another way to approach problems that might seem impossible at first. It has also highlighted the value of persistence, creativity, and teamwork in overcoming challenges that do not have clear solutions. These lessons go beyond the automotive world. They apply to many different areas where people face complex problems and must find their own way forward. The story also reminds us that progress often comes from situations that were not planned or expected. If FXAlexG's had successfully bought that third Bugatti, this entire chain of events might never have happened. If the crash had not occurred, the car would have remained within the control system. And if Matt had not taken on the challenge, none of this would be visible today. But because all these things did happen, we now have a story that is not only interesting, but also meaningful. It shows how unexpected events can lead to new possibilities, and how those possibilities can grow into something much larger over time. Now, everything is leading toward one final moment. The point where the Bugatti Chiron is no longer just a project, but a fully functioning machine once again. This is the moment that will bring all the different parts of the story together. It will confirm whether the rebuild has truly succeeded, and whether the ideas behind it hold up in reality. But no matter what happens, the story will not simply end there. The reaction that follows will be just as important as the result itself. People will analyze, discuss, and debate what this means for the future. Some will see it as proof that independent work can reach the highest levels of complexity. Others may still believe that official systems are necessary for cars like this. But either way, the conversation will continue, and it will likely grow even stronger. This is what makes this moment so powerful. It is not just the end of a rebuild. It is the beginning of a new way of thinking. And as the engine finally comes to life and the car returns to the road, it will carry with it the full weight of everything that led to that point. Every decision, every challenge, and every step taken along the way will be part of that moment. And that is why so many people are watching closely, waiting to see not just what happens, but what it means. Once the Bugatti Chiron finally runs and the rebuild is confirmed, the attention will not stay limited to viewers and fans. The wider automotive industry will begin to react, even if that reaction is not always public. Manufacturers, engineers, and specialists will all be watching closely, because this kind of project directly touches on how the industry operates at its highest level. For brands like Bugatti, cars are not just products. They are carefully controlled systems where every detail is managed, from design to maintenance. Allowing those systems to be taken apart and rebuilt outside of official environments challenges that structure in a very direct way. Even if no official statement is made, it is difficult to imagine that such a visible project would go unnoticed inside those companies. Engineers may study the rebuild out of curiosity, while decision makers may look at it from a strategic point of view. Does this change how customers view ownership? Does it affect how much control a brand can realistically maintain? These are questions that do not have simple answers, but they are now part of the conversation. At the same time, independent workshops and builders may feel encouraged by what they're seeing. A successful rebuild at this level could open the door for more ambitious projects, pushing the limits of what is considered possible outside official networks. This creates a kind of quiet tension between two worlds: the controlled environment of manufacturers and the growing confidence of independent builders. And while this tension may not always be visible, it is very real, and it will likely continue to develop as more people start to question where the boundaries truly are. Looking ahead, one of the biggest questions this story raises is about the future of car ownership itself. When someone buys a car, especially at the highest level, what does ownership really mean? Is it full control over the machine, or is it a limited form of access within rules set by the manufacturer? For many years, this question did not matter as much, because most people never reached a situation where those limits became visible. But projects like this bring those limits into focus. They show that there are systems in place that go beyond simple ownership, especially when it comes to highly advanced vehicles. As cars become more complex, with advanced electronics, software systems, and tightly controlled part supply, the balance between ownership and control becomes more complicated. This is not just a Bugatti issue. It applies to many modern vehicles at different levels. The difference is that in this case, everything is happening in a very public and high-profile way. That makes it easier for people to see and understand the situation. It turns an abstract idea into something real and visible. And as more people begin to think about these questions, it could lead to changes in how manufacturers approach their designs and policies. Whether those changes happen quickly or slowly, the conversation itself is already a step forward. It shows that people are paying attention and are willing to question systems that were once accepted without much thought. In the end, this entire story stands as a powerful example of how a single event can grow into something much larger than anyone expected. What began as a rejected purchase, followed by an unfortunate crash, has turned into one of the most watched and discussed rebuilds in recent memory. It has brought together questions about skill, control, ownership, and the limits of what is possible. And now, as the Bugatti Chiron reaches a point where it can return to life, all those elements come together in one defining moment. But what truly makes this story stand out is not just a result. It is the journey. It is the way each step led to the next, creating a chain of events that feels both unexpected and somehow inevitable at the same time. And as the engine finally starts and the car proves that it can exist again outside of its original system, the meaning of that moment will go far beyond the workshop where it happened. It will represent a shift in how people think, not just about this car, but about the entire idea of what can be done when limits are challenged. And even after that moment passes, the impact will remain, continuing to influence conversations, ideas, and decisions in ways that may not be fully understood right away. Because sometimes the most important changes do not happen loudly. They happen quietly, in moments like this, where everything comes together and moves forward into something new. While most people focus on the visible parts of this rebuild, like the body panels, the engine, and the overall progress, there's another side to this project that is much harder to see, but just as important. Modern hypercars like the Bugatti Chiron are not just mechanical machines. They are deeply connected systems that rely heavily on electronics, sensors, and software working together perfectly. This means that even if every physical part of the car is repaired or replaced correctly, the car still might not function properly if the electronic systems are not aligned. This is one of the biggest challenges in a rebuild like this, and it is something that is often underestimated by viewers. Each system in the car communicates with others, sharing data and responding in real time. If one part of that communication is missing or incorrect, it can cause problems that are difficult to diagnose. Unlike older cars, where issues could often be traced to a single faulty component, modern hypercars require a much deeper level of understanding. You need to know not just how parts fit together, but how they interact through software and control systems. This adds a layer of complexity that goes far beyond traditional mechanical work. It also explains why manufacturers prefer to keep these processes within controlled environments, where they have full access to the necessary tools and information. But in this case, that support is not available.